So while the tire is draining the calcium chloride, I'm going to go ahead and start wire wheeling the hub to get that cleaned up and to see how badly all the flanges are. This one also looks like I'm going to have to at least weld some extra material onto it. Like I said, this one's got to be cut away. That one's in pretty sad shape too, but can probably be salvaged. So I've cut away that flange that was not salvageable, and we'll get the grinder on there to get it bare metal for a good weld. And then these other spots that are kind of dished out, I guess I'm going to just try to, instead of putting new material, I'm just going to hit those cavities with the welding rod and see if I can, fill them up and then grind them flat again. We'll see if that works. Alright, the tire's still draining. It's been about 2 hours. In the meantime, I've ground down to pretty good bare metal on these flanges. I'm going to make the new flange for the one I cut off. First thing we're going to do is drill the hole for that. Start out with a 1/4 inch pilot hole, which makes drilling the bigger holes a lot easier. Some more oil in there. Now we'll change bits. 5/8 inch hole. It's almost a little bit too much for my little drill press, but just keep hitting it with some oil. I think we'll get through there. Just about there. Next, we're going to use one of the good flanges as a template and put our blank on there. One of the new bolts to line it up, and then we're going to clamp that in place and then trace it from the other side. So there's the line traced on the blank that we'll use our 4.5 inch cut off to make some straight cuts close to that line, and then we'll use the grinder to grind down to the line to the proper dimension. So we made the rough cuts with the 4.5 inch cut-off wheel, and so our blank is now in a rough shape, and then we'll use the grinder to grind it down to that line, and then we'll position it on the hub. So we're grinding back on the rim itself. We're we made our rough cuts on our new flange for the hub, and now put the grinding wheel on the 4.5-inch grinder and grinding it down to that line that we traced earlier using one of the good flanges as a template. So we've positioned the old hub in the new rim. I just dropped the bolts in place. They actually come from the other direction, but this is just so I've put the blank in its position. So now I can mark the edge of it to cut it so that it will line up with the cut-off mark of the old hub. And then I'll make the cut and then we'll be ready to weld it on. Alright, the flange repair blank is cut and ground down so that it lines up with the old hub. Now I'm going to tack weld it so it's stable, and then pull the hub out of the rim and weld it from both sides. Alright, the repaired flange has been welded from both sides. I'll have to grind that down and touch it up if necessarily. I had a little blowout at one end, so I'll have to fix that as well, but the new flange is on there, and it's a matter of grinding that and then trying to fill up these dished areas around the other bolts with just welding material, and try to clean them up and make them real solid again. Alright, I've ground down the weld for the new flange, and re-welded a few times and ground it down again. That is the new flange there. Pretty happy with that weld. Looks good and strong. Also welded material around those holes that were dished out and brought them back up to being good and strong. So now I'll just have to wire wheel the rest of the hub, get the wire wheel on it and get as much rust off as possible, and then it'll be ready for a coat of paint.